City of Stevens Point Board of Park Commissioners meeting, recorded November 4th, 2020.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, that is approved. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the service that you're providing. It's really, especially coming through a year like this, we really appreciate your being there.
No, and thank you to the park system. We're pretty happy that we have such a great partnership, and Dan's been unbelievable without, getting his head too big. And you guys are really lucky to have him because he's great to work with.
Yeah, we think so too. So thank you again, Patrick.
Thank you, guys.
Item number 4, approval of Iverson Park Candlelight Snowshoes special event on January 30th, 2021, submitted by Northward Paddle and Pedal. Pedal and Paddle, P&P.
This is a new special event request. So per our process and policy, we bring the new events to the Park Commission. The first piece of it is that this would be an event that would have a fee to it. So therefore, it would be something that we would charge for the usage of the lodge for anything that Northwood Pedal and Paddle would operate that day. How it would look from a logistical standpoint is we would be closing down, pending an item later tonight, but we would be closing our item and have a transition period where we would shut down the sledding piece, and then it would transition over into what Patrick is proposing to operate. One of the things that we did get on a call right away with to review was the protocol. So making sure that mass gatherings, under 50 people, how people are going to social distance. And we kind of gave Patrick quite a few questions just trying to figure out what that would look like. And Patrick can expand on a little further, but you'll see that there was a map included. This would be an outdoor event trying to transition people throughout the park. So based on what staff has been received and based on the numbers and the sequencing in terms of how the registration would be and getting people out on the trail, staff felt that the plan that they have in place is adequate. And our recommendation would be approval, provided they follow that safety plan and nothing would change in terms of local guidance or health department guidance. And then Patrick is here tonight to further expand on any questions and to review more in-depth details if you'd like.
Kira.
Will there be malt beverages sold?
No, the plan is actually to be like coffee, hot chocolate, and as you see in the map, we plan on having those at varied locations throughout the park to limit our congregating at any specific site. So we have 10 of these large, they're 100 cup carafes. They hold temperature for a long time, so they'll be set throughout. And the percolators, because they do require electricity, coffee, they'll be located primarily at the lodge where we'll then transfer them throughout the park to keep things warm.
Great.
Thank you.
I only asked because number 12 on the form, you don't have anything checked. So I'm guessing that needs to be marked that fermented malt beverages will not be dispensed in any way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions, or Patrick, would you like to provide any additional information to us?
Yeah, I can quickly explain. I know it says a lot of it in here, but this is our 3rd year of what we call our Bigfoot bus tours. So this is one where we'll bus people from Rapids if they so choose. It's a mask required busing, similar to what we did at Iverson Park. Everything is booked online, so we know how many people are coming. There's no on-site registration at all. And it's very popular, of course, and then anybody from Stevens Point, surrounding areas can drive themselves. The cool part about this is what we plan on doing is having staggered times. So you register for a 6 o'clock, you come there at 6, it's registration fee. We have rentals for snowshoes. You start throughout the park. Then we have a 6:30 staff, they'll be the next group that comes. So we're hoping, the nice part is we spread people throughout the entire park and they really can kind of see Iverson, outside of when they typically see it. They drive by in the dark. This allows them to have a really cool aspect of, what is really going on there. So yeah, you can see there is we plan on having the stop 1 being the beach house. Stop 2, it's the open air by the parking lot. And then we're unsure if we do a stop 3, depends on how many registrations we have. If we have more than that 150, that we're limited to 150, we really don't want to send people away. but we'd have to, of course, then add a third stop to spread people out a little bit more. We do limit all of our events, no matter what we do, to 200 because that's the mass we can do for our concessions.
Looks like
That's
a really
probably
nice
it in a
event.
nutshell. Thank you. We have a couple other ones. We have one with Wood County. We have one. This is our, actually, it'll be the second in the series of 5.
Patrick, where does someone find out about these events if they're interested?
Great question. So we do posters. We'll pin them up around town, but we have roughly 3,000 followers on Facebook. That's where a lot of interest comes from, and it's surprising. It's they usually, if they don't, someone's not on Facebook or they don't see some of our marketing. We're in the back of a couple of different local guides. Like there's actually a Wood County guide where it says that's where our events are. So usually people just follow that, and we fill up pretty quick. And other than that, it's word of mouth, really, because with 200, it fills up. It's faster than you think. So it's a lot just, local marketing. We try to attract people. During the winter, there's really not a whole lot to do. So this has become a really popular event for us.
Wayne.
Got a couple of questions, Patrick. One, from a check-in standpoint, you've got staggered start times. Will there also be staggered check-in to make sure that we've got no more than 50 people coming through the gate at one time?
Correct. Yep. So you'll register. So when you book online, you'll choose your time. And each time will have a limited amount of people in it. So like for Iverson, when we do our kayak canoe rentals, we have, like this last year with COVID, everyone had to book online. We didn't allow anybody to pay when they got there. So they choose their time. So let's say, for example, you're going to have 50 people that come at 6. We can get them on the trail within easily that half-hour time. Then people are going to come at 6:30. We'll get them out. 7, get them out. So every group, each category or each start time will be limited to that 50 people. And then that's why it's, hopefully the first group, they'll be the warming station. They'll be having a hot cup of coffee, they want it. They'll be leaving by the time the next people get down. And then by the time, it's about a 45-minute to an hour walk through out there. So they'll be leaving by the time the third or fourth set's coming in. So, it's a lot of planning and coordinating with staff on site. However, that's the nice part about booking online is we know who's coming, when they're coming, and how long they're going to be there.
And then I guess one other question, and Patrick, you kind of alluded to it with when you get them on the trail. Is there at all a possibility, or will you have staff on the trail to kind of keep groups separate? Because my concern would be, and I think it's a great idea, but just I work at the university and deal with COVID on a daily basis. So is there a way that my concern would be the front end of one group gets to the back of another group and all of a sudden you got 70 people in the same spot on the trail. How do you minimize that?
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's because, with that 200 people, that limitation, and with a large park, we would have staff actually at each, warming section. We'd have them throughout the trail. It's not just for keeping distance and for COVID's sake. It's actually, believe it or not, more on the safety side. That's just the safety side. If someone does fall, we need to be reporting quickly. We have it's called a snow dog that sits on site to quickly get to people. But yeah, we do have staff staggered throughout to coordinate, like to not just COVID, but it is safety, to keep that distance. So there's no perfect scenario for sure, as people come, hopefully when they get their confirmation email, there'll be details in there that says, you must arrive at this time. We don't want to stop anybody at the gate to create a backing parking log, but we will tell them, whoever's the parking attendant, they have to stay in their vehicle until your time is up. So this way it keeps people either in the vehicles, on the trail. We have enough segmented areas throughout the park. We feel we can do it very successfully.
Oh, great. It sounds like you've thought through this with all these details. It sounds really good.
Yeah, actually, and the park staff, that's what that call was. We worked through a lot of it. They were actually really helpful to come up with ideas as well.
Not surprised at all.
Great. Any further discussion?
This is Alder Slowinski. I just noticed on that application that it says here that it potentially assistance with grooming. I guess, Dan, how is that going to work out? I guess that's.
Yep, good question. So we did talk through, and Scott's on the call with us. We went over what our grooming schedule and what our route is in the morning when our staff isn't already. So we actually go through and compact our cross-country ski trail, and that would be the same. This snowshoe track would actually happen on top of that. We may add an additional loop. So we talked through with Patrick, making sure that if we have the track down, that's not going to affect, and we actually have the staff already planned to be there in the morning. We wouldn't be bringing anybody in additionally or doing anything different than we typically normally do, except we may have to add a half loop with the machine that's already at the park.
So that wouldn't be, so no charge to the applicant.
The only thing that we did talk through with Patrick is for those processes, we typically charge whatever our labor force would be. So for example, if it's normally a 2-hour weekend where they come in that day, it's 2 hours. If we end up in a 2.5-hour scenario, we would bill that half hour of time and material.
All right. Again, I just want to make sure that, the perception is that, we have a private entity that's using a public park, and, city employees are basically doing work for, no charge.
Yep. No, we would track anything additional than normal, and that would be added across, and very similar how we handle like the ball fields for a weekend tournament.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, let's see. Do we have a motion on this?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Thank you. Does anyone want to move?
This is Alder Slawinski. I think this is a great event. Again, another option for people to get out in the middle of winter and kind of shake off the winter blues. So I will move to approve this event.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, Alder Zarazua, second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right, thank you very much. Again, good luck with the event, Patrick. It sounds like fun. So,
Thank you much, guys.
okay, thanks. Item number 5, approval of 5-year Green Circle Trail Maintenance Agreement between Portage County Parks Department, Stevens Point Parks Department, and Green Circle Trail Committee. Dan?
So this agreement is actually something that's pretty much been an informal agreement for almost 30 years. Basically, as the Green Circle developed, the county park system with the former county parks director, Tom Schrader, obviously, and several community members, as you know, and countless people to go through how this trail came together. So what happened was, with the 2 recent retirements of both directors, we started having discussions with the committee, similarly internally with Scott and Todd and my team. As we talked through about how we're doing what we're doing, we said it was time to try to put something in writing so we knew exactly which segments were whose, as faces change and names change. So we started this process probably about, I'm going to say 2.5 months ago or so. Met with the county parks, Green Circle, talked through it, walked a few segments of the trail. The only changes here really in this agreement that isn't what we necessarily were doing is the Brickyard Trail, which is up near, basically it's what borders the sculpture park through some of the Century property. And then we have the property, it's not even an easement. We own a stretch of property that runs where you just south of the Plover River Park down to the Whiting Well Field that they were also maintaining. When I say they, the county park system, we're taking that on, some additional mileage that is within our purview, and we're right next to it already. That's the reason we looked at that. One thing that's a bigger difference is we were not receiving a financial, basically, payment from the Green Circle Committee. However, the county parks were, because they were doing quite a few more miles than us. So as we formalize this and put this in, there is a $5,000 payment annually that would be included to the city. And that's really to help cover some of the labor force that we put in. We will track it to see how we do on that. We necessarily haven't done that in the past, but our intention is to try to do some tracking of it to see how that does go along. But this would put in a 5-year agreement. Our hope is to continue this agreement forever, is our hope. I mean, it's been a great partnership, but to start being it's the first time it's a contractual agreement, we started with a 5-year term based on our negotiation with the county and Green Circle. And the recommendation from staff tonight after we reviewed it is, as we all know, one of the most popular segments is right along the riverfront, and there's an asphalt trail there. And we know there's going to be a capital expense down the road, and that's going to be replacement of that asphalt. So recommendation from staff is to approve the agreement, and I've talked to the comptroller or treasurer to set the $5,000 aside in the fund, and then we could use that money to replace that trail, or at least help pay for a good portion of it. Hopefully we get many years out of it, because we do, crack fill and seal coat it. But whenever that would come up, hopefully we'd have some money to put towards it to help ease the burden on the capital budget.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Dan about this? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move we accept it as presented.
Thank you, Wayne. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, seconded by Sue. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. All right, approval of the 5-year Green Circle Trail Maintenance Agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you. Item number 6, approval of Iverson Park Winter Sports Area Modified Opening Plans. Dan.
Okay, so we're trying to plan ahead as all of these things this year in an unusual year to be safe, but also still continue to offer some recreational opportunities for the community, which is obviously one of our sole purposes. So I give the staff credit. Scott and Kate all got together with myself a couple weeks ago, and we started talking about how do we plan for what we can do in the winter sports area, and how does that look this year to still be safe and be able to open the facility. We really dove into, first and foremost, obviously safety for the staff, and then also how can we limit the size capacities, how can we regulate it because it's really an unfenced area. And where we landed is what you see in the packet. Essentially what we're recommending is we didn't see a way that we could put plastic or box in the staff on the toboggan runs. And we thought through a lot of different options, but there's really no great way. And the safety component of having to make sure that everyone is safely in the toboggan, that they don't have arms or limbs or anything hanging out. There's a frequent touching and frequent close proximity to people. So the hard decision here, that's the really revenue generating piece of our winter operation, as well as hot chocolate and private party rentals. But that's really the draw where we rent the toboggans. But our recommendation in the form, if you've seen it, is that we actually would close that for this year based on the environment that we're in. But however, we tried to say, how can we still make it a positive place in the community? And we believe, and to the staff's credit, we kind of came up with a 3-tiered approach to say that if we open the hill, we can make it with signage and basically make it based on the way that we have our staff staggered. So we would take the staff that usually work in the toboggan run, move them over there. So we have more moderators, more attendants, more people talking. And start with saying, okay, we're going to see how it goes by marking the 6-foot distances for the lines, having one-way traffic, and allowing people to use the sled hill where they're bringing their own equipment like they do now. Then we said, how do we regulate it? What if we run over? What if all of a sudden it's starting to become, a conjumbled, or we have a bunch of people packing in? And the only way we believed that was possible was going to kind of a tier 2, a phase 2, where we would start actually limiting cars in the park, where we would go to the door with the riverfront ticket booths, so our staff isn't out, and they could actually limit how many vehicles come through the door. We tried to talk through, usually there's more than one person in a vehicle. So if we started with, say, 35, that number could change based on what we're seeing, but we could limit the flow into the park. And then we'd have our attendants with radios be able to communicate how it looks for people. When a vehicle would leave, we could let more vehicles in. That's not our preference. And we believe it's a big enough area with the runs, we don't have to do it. But we believed if we didn't have that in place, number one, we couldn't let people know up front. We do have a plan. You have to social distance. This isn't an option. Number two, we did have something we could go to. Worst case scenario, which we don't want to get to, we did develop a phase 3 that would allow at that point for us to actually close the area and then reinvent rules if we have to, or try to go through that. And again, based on previous years, you have a really nice weather day, a lot of snow, it definitely draws. So that was kind of how we went through that. The other pieces we talked about was the congregation points. So the warming building came up, and originally we thought, should we put porta potties outside and try to work it that way? Well, we talked about it some more, and we said the hand washing stations, the ability to go in and use those, as well as restrooms, it has fared well for us throughout the summer season. And we believe that facility would be beneficial for the winter season here too, if people can go and wash their hands if they need to. So what we proposed is, following, even though it's going to expire or set to expire, the occupancy limit, we would say it's not a warming house now, it's a restroom and wash facility essentially. You'd enter in the one door, you'd go in, use the restroom, you put your clothes back on and you'd leave. Also a first aid station, obviously, if we need it to be that too. We'd have somebody in there for staff that would be cleaning. So we would clean touch points frequently. We'd be able to wash the bathrooms down at certain pieces of it. For example, we do it every day, but maybe it'll be halfway through or 2 times an extra a day, and we facilitate that with the staff. That'll allow people still to be able to go indoors if they need it, have a central point again for, an emergency situation or something like that. The full parameters of this proposal essentially is, again, it would allow that sledding area in the community. Financially, there is a little bit of a financial impact. We typically budget $5,000 in revenue at the facility. We do still have it included that we would look to do private rentals of the building during our non-public hours. So we still may have some people that say, okay, we're going to have less than 50, just like we did for the lodges. We would pay the fee and they would be able to use the hill. We would not have private toboggan slides, obviously, that side's closed. So right now for the forecast in terms of the budget, we would say that we wouldn't bring any revenue in, just so you can forecast it on the conservative side to say this is how much it could cost. Just so you can kind of see the financials, and then we can open up the questions, and Scott's also here to talk more specifics if you have any questions on operations. I just wanted to share a spreadsheet with you. We worked through this a little bit. You should all be able to see it here now, I believe. Everybody see it?
Yes.
So our sledding hill on a standard year, it really varies in terms of expenditures and revenue on what type of winter we have. The more cold days with good snow and nice weather, sunny days, obviously the more people that come down. In 2018, if you add up our budget, if you add the revenue, which is about $2,000, you look through our expenditures, wages are the largest expenditure. You'll see it was about $11,000 subsidy is what we call that. But how we're comparing it basically is our expense against our revenue. 2019, better year, more snow. So we had a little larger expenditure on seasonal employee wages. And this total also reflects the employee we have at the Parker building in Gerke. So those 2 facilities are obviously usually open similar amounts of time when the cold is there. But you'll see more revenue that year, closer to 5,000, more expenditure in terms of the labor. We were about 13,000 that those facilities cost the city that year. 2020, taking this year into account, we did have a nice long season this last year. You'll see that we're about 13,000, a little under 14,000. Revenue was actually up, which was great. Our online system and some added marketing added some more private parties. So we had about a $12,000 expenditure. So 2021 budget, looking ahead, we actually budget, if you add the revenue and expense total, a $28,000 loss. Again, because we end up closing some days due to weather, maybe snow events. We typically don't come anywhere near that. You can see it's been closer to 10,000 is what we end up with. Looking to next year though, or this year into next year, our budget's a little difficult to follow, as you can imagine, because a part of the winter falls in this year, so December, and then January, February, March fall in next year. So the 2021 budget doesn't account for what would be obviously December. It would be that would be on the 2022 tally. But if you look at it as a whole, which is how we look at it for a season, if we were to be open every day that we budget, which is about 11 weeks, it's very unlikely we would do that. We still want to paint that picture. We show our full budgeted amount of the $27,500 that we would use for the wages. Again, this is a utopic, everything is great, we're open every day, all day, very unlikely, but we still wanted to show that picture. Then if you went down and we spent the expenditures on our supplies and repair, we would, without the revenue, show that we could be over our budgeted subsidy. With that said, though, we'd be at budget for expenses. We're not proposing to spend any more than the council and the department is allocated in the budget, but not having a revenue total does run that risk. Again, it's more likely, as you know, it's 60 degrees here in November. That can change quickly, but it really is weather dependent. This number is much more likely to probably follow something in the lines of what we've done in the history here in the past, but I just wanted to show a worst case scenario. So with that said, we'd be happy to answer any questions in terms of the plan itself, but we do have protocol in place using a lot of the Willett Arenas protocol we've talked about with educating staff, staying home when you're sick, cleaning. We intend to carry those things forward, continue to monitor the local and state guidance on any sort of gatherings. This is outdoors. And with the budget impact that we show, we do believe this would give the community a place to go. So our recommendation would be to keep the sledding hill open, close the other half of the operation, and then proceed accordingly, monitoring pretty much daily as the environment continues to go through the year.
Dan, will there be an ice rink there, and will people be able to go in into the facility to change into their skates?
We do plan to still put the rink there, and yes, essentially we wouldn't be asking people for example, what their reason to enter the building would be. What we had talked about more so was that we would sign it to say this is a warming building, or I should say a restroom, restroom first aid station. If people want to put their skates on, that's fine. We just wouldn't let them stay in there and say eat lunch or have hot chocolate, things like that.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, Dan, are you putting your staff inside that building in any sort of precarious position if they have to play traffic cop?
What we did say is we would mandate masks in the building. So everyone it would require masks. Our employees are typically behind the concession area. So there's a counter space. So to your point, if they had to be at the doorway, for example, and it started to congregate, that would be a risk and we would have to close the building. So really a plan B would be if we can't regulate it with people verbally from a safe area, obviously they would be passing through with the masks. Our second plan would be back to that portable toilet restroom outside. And then that would become just a staff location that they would warm up in. But we do designate that concession area for staff only.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or any questions for Dan regarding this plan?
And if you do have any operational questions, again, Scott he came to the meeting tonight as well. It's underneath his direction in terms of how the staff, where they're placed. So if you have questions, feel free to ask those as well.
Okay, big silence. I guess maybe there is none. All right, the item is approval of the Iverson Park Winter Sports Area modified opening plans. We have a motion on that. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I'd move to approve it.
Okay. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and seconded by Bob Freckman. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, that item passes. Thank you, Scott and your staff for all the work you put in on this. It's one of the things that people really enjoy in the community is being able to get out and sled, and we're one of the few communities that still has that available. So thank you.
Welcome. It's family entertainment. It's Price is Right.
For sure, for sure. Okay, item number 7, approval of Celebration Memorial Bench Program and marketing brochure for Living Trees and Celebration Memorial Bench Program in the city parks. Dan.
Okay, so this goes back, I think about 4 months ago when we had a proposal come forward about some benches in the parks. And at that time, we had a real general discussion saying, should we create a program that is not just a real inexpensive program in the benches where it ends up that they're all over the place and we have a hard time managing volume, as well as when a bench goes in a park, you're really losing park real estate. Now it holds that space for years. That's where it sits. So taking both those into effect, that day, I think we had talked and said, what if we looked at like a $5,000 bench that would actually result in some money that would then be allocated to the department to do other things if we did something with a steel bench. So what we have here, and I'll go ahead and share my screen again. I know most of you probably have the packets in front of you, but just in case you don't, is the first draft of this program that we have. So this would be a tri-fold brochure that we would print on a nice shiny gloss colored paper, so that when people would come into the department, we'd hand them something that's professionally done, because as we know, if you start talking about a $5,000 contribution for a bench, it's not a cheap option. The bench actually, if you can see, looks like it has tree limbs and the trees for the backing, and then it would have a personalized plaque in it that would be set in the bench. So it should be pretty well vandal resistant, other than probably spray paint or if somebody were to etch on it. These benches are actually made in Wisconsin. They come out of Wanakee, Wisconsin, and they've been used in, this actually is a very similar bench to what's on the Great Sauk Trail down in the Madison region. And the idea of kind of how they actually fundraised for their trail in a very similar way we're talking about selling the bench. So that's what the center part of the brochure shows. We already have, through partnership with the Community Foundation in town, a Living Trees program that Todd Ernster has been overseeing for years. It's a very popular program. The trees are a $300 contribution. And you can see on the next page, we actually show where the plaques go that have the names of the individual that it's in memory of or in honor of. Right now, we have this program on just a single page 8.5 by 11 white page with no photos. So we actually thought the nice thing about this process has been it gives you a little better visual rendering of some options. And Todd will have the ability, as time goes on, to continue diversity. We'll be able to swap out a tree if we start to get too large in one variety or another. But these are the 6, as well as we opened it to say if somebody had a special request, we left an other category. So you still could work with Todd and his team to go to a special type of tree if you'd like. How it sets up then ultimately is we would manage this program for the benches in-house. So we have a stating that the checks for that would come to the city. We believe the expense right now, obviously steel price varies, concrete price varies, to be right around the $2,000, $2,200, $2,300 range to be able to put the bench on a concrete slab in an area. We would obviously let them request an area, but we would work with them to make sure it's going to a place where we actually need a bench. And then the leftover remaining, basically half of the payment would be going to a fund that only the Parks Department would use. We would give a 10-year warranty on the bench is how it's shown. Really, we're warrantying against vandalism. These benches are set to last much longer than that. And then the tree program we show, we pretty much try to warranty those as long as we can. If somebody were to damage a tree or something dies of, of disease, Todd pretty well replaces them no matter what. But we did list on here because when we were talking through it, we've never really put a time on it. So we listed 15 years on the trees, but again, we've pretty well always warranted those trees. So this program is basically as it's always been. This bench program would be a new program. And then again, this would become a trifold brochure. So this is where we landed. We did examine like concrete benches. We looked at a few others, but based on our evaluation, our review, we thought this would be something that when you saw it in the park, you would know it's part of this program because it's different than anything else we have. Built in Wisconsin, built to last as a steel bench. Obviously it's powder coated. It's got a nice color to it. And this is what we're proposing for that first kind of draft based on our conversations a few months ago.
It's a nice looking brochure.
It would be a trifold. Obviously everyone knows what that is, but we printed one out. This isn't a high gloss finish, but ultimately you'd be able to walk out with something in your hands if you were considering the option.
Great. All right. Any questions for Dan on this program? David.
Thank you, Chair. No, I remembered your reluctance on this from the last discussion. And so I just want to make sure that you really view this as, generating the revenue to make it worth it. And maybe I would also press the question of the price point and, whether you think that's right or whether it could be higher.
Great question. So I was very reluctant to several of the requests we get where people say, I'll buy a bench for $700 and then we'll just place it. Because that always concerns me of the uniform look. And then also when they're wood or they're not made of a certain, if they're not made for heavy duty steel, commercially built, that we end up having a maintenance nightmare that the Parks Department has to kind of go back and forth through. So I'm much more comfortable with a program where somebody that's going to come with interest in this program is going to realize they're making really a commitment to the park system as well. It's going to pay for the bench in completeness and also be saying, here's some additional funds to do some things for the park system. The price point, what I see it as is, let's say we sold 5 of these benches this next year. I think then we're probably underpriced. That's how I would look at it. I would see it more as if we sell a few a year or a few over a couple of years. I don't see this necessarily as a revenue generator, more so than rather than us just saying, no, we don't allow benches in the parks. I think that's not as friendly for somebody who really maybe somebody spent their whole life, in an area of a park and it really would mean a lot to the family. We need a bench there anyways because the one's deteriorating. I believe this offers an option to say, we do have something that exists, but it's not just kind of a fly-by-night or a really inexpensive option. The inexpensive option or less expensive option, it's not, obviously $300 is still a pretty fair amount of money, but would be to put a tree in, which obviously also helps beautify. So I think it kind of gives both ends of the spectrum. But I would say the price point would be something that would be worth us reviewing almost annually with our fees and charges schedule. And we could just look at it every October and say, how many did we sell? Okay, that looks good, or we should maybe consider increasing or decreasing. If we don't sell one over the next 3 years, I think then it shows maybe we're overpriced as well.
So a piece of it really is that you're getting the requests so regularly that part of you said that you think it's worth being more responsive to.
I do. It's probably the number one request of the park system that in terms of phone calls that I get. Pretty much every upgrade we do for park projects, it comes up. What can we put benches or sell benches? And then people, quite often when there's some money left over, maybe from a funeral or something like that, people do call and they're quite interested in benches. We do sell a lot of the trees that way, which is good. That program has really been a nice resource. And this would give one more resource for the word, no, we don't do it. We do get quite a bit of negative feedback on that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Makira.
So I know like once you put a bench, you would expect it to stay there, but we're also like considering moving a playground, to a different spot. If a bench were there, do we still have the freedom to move it if we would need to?
Absolutely. So typically we could say you request a spot, but it would be our property, we would own it. And essentially, typically how those have worked, and what I'm familiar with even in other communities, is if we had to do something, we most likely would reach out to the family and just say, hey, this is the scenario, and try to work on another location. But ultimately, as the owner of the bench, we would have the right to move it if we needed to, but we would try to do that tactfully and make sure they were included as well.
Okay, thank you.
And quite honestly, the first locations I think that we would consider on this, and obviously we would work with Scott and Todd very closely with the family of a family that was interested, is probably replacement of deteriorating benches that have been there for some time already. And as you know, we probably all can assume that the riverfront is one of the most probably first places people usually ask. And again, the idea wouldn't be to litter, I shouldn't say litter, but to fill 30 benches in that area, but maybe to look at a spot that, okay, this one's really deteriorating. Here's your first option, and work mutually through that way.
Sue.
Yes. So how are these held down? Because I know I had a confrontation with some junior high kids when they were last summer when they were taking the picnic benches or picnic tables and throwing them in the river. Or in the lake.
We would have to anchor these with a bolt. So essentially, usually an L bracket on each leg, and we would anchor them right into the concrete. So after the concrete cured, we'd have to probably pre-drill it, but we'd go get some self-tapping anchor bolts and anchor them in.
I think this is a great idea because we had some in the dog park and they were well received, except that we bought them at Fleet Farm and they didn't last very well. So, but they're beautiful benches,
Good. Wayne.
I guess, Dan, from a budgetary standpoint, let's say we sell 4 or 5 benches and we have 8 or 10 grand. How do we guarantee that money stays inside the park department purview for use on things that they need?
Yep. So 2 options. We'd start right now working with our comptroller treasurer's office, and it would go in a reserve fund for it. The second option, let's say, for example, this really becomes something that's every year we're generating revenue. We'd have the option, if we so choose, to also open up a fund at the community foundation, how the tree program is actually held. So at the community foundation, the money from the trees goes there. The bills get written out of that account, and that's just segregated only for that. And it would really be generating, we don't want to put it over there if there's only a few $100s because you pay fees. But if it starts to become several thousand, we could earn some interest and some investment revenue as well.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Can we have a motion? Bob? Okay.
I second.
Okay, seconded by Sue. All those in, any further discussion? Are we done? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you very much for the work on that program. Whoever was involved in it, Dan and Scott and whoever else. So thank you. Item number 8, approval of awarding site analysis and project engineering to Rattler Corporation for Buchholz Park Playground Replacement Project.
So this one, typically with the professional services, for example, when we do like Gerke tennis court, usually when we're going to bring a consultant in, those are things we negotiate, we bring them in and we go forward with. And then that's typically after we bid it out, that's when the results come back to the commission. The reason you're receiving this up front, I apologize, I've gotten the police alarm. I'm going to put my window down. Okay, sorry about that. the reason this is here before the committee tonight is because there's really a two-step process here. So as you all recall, we had talked about and awarded doing some master planning for the beach area in Buchholz as well as Kosakowski Park. And that process is going to be taking place here over the winter months, and we'll be bringing some of that back. With that said, the capital budget is approved, and I'm going to talk about it in my director's report, but the $100,000 for the new playground in Buchholz Community Park is in that budget. So we're going to have a really nice playground upgrade coming to one of our most popular parks that really is going to set us up to have a unique facility in that area. The current playground, if you've ever been down there when it rains, you'll see the ducks having a field day because it fills up with water. And Todd in the Forestry Division is who maintains the playground wood chip surfaces as well as the playgrounds themselves. And that area has been a really big challenge from a site, basically a site, the way it's laid out, the topography and where we're sitting with it. So we reached out, we work with Rettler for a lot of these different designs and layouts. And we believed it was time to just look at the park. Now we've got a new trail going in terms of the green circle area, and just say, let's master plan where the playground makes the most sense to be placed to serve the next 35 plus years before it gets replaced again. So what this proposal shows is that we would do some topographic work. We did check with the engineering department, and the playground area has never been shot. So these are worthwhile benchmarks that we would need and could keep on file for future projects, as well as then just do some site analysis, look at the swing sets, things that are across the way over adjacent the riverfront area, and see if we should centrally locate it, place it, and also tie it in to make sure that wherever we go based on this planning that's happening for the beach, that they really mend and gel and it makes sense for the park. That total fee is ultimately $1,500, which if we need $1,500, it could be a little bit less, but that's not to exceed for the topographic shooting and work. And then $3,750 to do the actual site analysis, laying the master plan out. We bring that document here for approval. Then the last piece, which is the piece that typically doesn't come before the Park Commission, but I wanted to include it, is to actually, for our playgrounds, a lot of the times how we've done these in the past is Todd and his team would work together with playground vendors and reps. We pick out a design and we place it. One thing we haven't done necessarily in the front piece is go through and lay out an ADA accessible pathway, actual entrance, a curb around the area, and laying it out basically based on a professionally designed playground. Given the location of this in an area that gets tremendous amounts of use, I believe that's worthwhile to do in this instance. It's also going to show basically within their planning that they're doing that we lay it out so that it drains properly. We'll be able to look at, can we potentially do a port in place surface on this one? Because this budget is $100,000, there's potential we may be able to. And it'll allow us to come back again and make sure that we pick out kind of a newer, unique design, professionally designed with a concrete curb to hold the plate if we have wood chips in, or to hold that port in place surface. And how they propose that would be at basically 7.5% of the construction budget. So basically we're talking $7,500 additional, and that's a full bid package and things of that nature. So what I am proposing to the commission tonight is that we would approve moving forward with the master planning and the layout. That the way those two processes tie in, we place this structure in the correct position based on what's going on in the park, and that we would move forward to actually design and do the bid package for the professional layout of the playground itself. How we would pay for it is essentially we have $100,000 for the playground. So the $7,500 design, we would take out of that, we would build a $93,000 or $92,500 playground facility in the park. The additional money for this master plan layout, we still have about $16,000 left over after we've done the Buchholz project that we're paying for with it from the, it's a designated fund for Buchholz Park. It came from when we did the private land sale. I would propose we'd use those funds to move forward with this design work. And I believe that the end result then, when we get to about fall, when this is all done, is really going to be one of the best, if not the best, other than cash playground system in the city.
Sounds really good. Any discussion or questions for Dan? Makira, that's your area, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This sounds really exciting. Between this and the beach project, I'm very thankful that we're looking at this park. And like you said, it's a very heavily used park and part of the Green Circle Trail. And just, there's so many reasons that I'm glad this money is being put into this upgrade. Also glad that you're addressing the flooding under the equipment. So that would be good. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, can we get a motion on this?
I would move to approve.
Okay, second?
I'd second it.
Was that Jeremy or Wayne? Was that Wayne?
It's actually Sean, I think.
Shabilsky.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that was Sean? Sorry. All right. All those in favor, or any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, great, motion carried. Number 9, the director's report.
Okay, so I'm
Dan, it's
actually,
your show.
it is, and I'm going to share the director's report tonight, actually. Thankfully, Scott, Kate, and Todd from our team is on the call, so I'm going to give a couple updates here on COVID and also some operations in terms of administration. And then they've actually each got a little piece they're going to talk about in terms of each of their divisions, what they've got going on. So just real quickly, I wanted to let everyone know, obviously we can't talk specifics, but the closed session item that we've reviewed previously, there's some items still happening with that. And I believe that you'll see something coming out most likely in a future meeting. So just so you know, I'll have more of an update most likely next month, but I did want to let you know that that did not stop at this point. It's still being investigated. So I will share, we've had a number of COVID related instances within the department, either a close contact situation. We have had a couple people that have had, positive test results as well, but I can let you know that we've continued to operate and be able to get through it. And we've been much more healthy than unhealthy, but we have had some come up. And as you've probably seen the news about other departments within the city as well, that we've been working through it. So the staff has really responded well, and they've really been following the protocol with masks well. We actually even had a recent incident where a number of members had to go out because close contacts, and none of them actually got it. Just they were close contacts. The masks really served, and the social distancing really served well. So with that in mind, though, the city has been reviewing, and we've been talking this week just most recently about if maybe some office hours, some teleworking things may be changing. So we will be, as a staff, meeting for the Park Rec and Forestry this week at the end of the week. I don't see much changing in terms of our office hours. We need to be able to allow key check-in and check-out for different rentals and things during the week. But I would see potentially where maybe like a Tuesday or Wednesday, we might be by appointment only. And maybe Monday, Friday, or Monday, Thursday, Friday, we have the designated office hours. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. If you are stopping by the office for some reason, take a look. You'll probably see an update coming from other departments as well as we enter into next week and we start going that route. Luckily, we do have a number of laptops we don't have a lot of positions that can work from home, but we do have enough that if those instances come up, we might be able to spread some people out and let them do some teleworking as well. With that said, I also wanted to mention that the capital budget has gone through the process. We do have a busy year next year. The Iverson restroom project for $215,000 is still included. The Gerke tennis court project is in the budget. And I wanted to tell the Park Commission just real high level, there's been the discussion and a request from a group of pickleball players asking if we would review the Gerke tennis courts and would there be an option to consider some designated pickleball courts. The short answer is, right now, we believe the only path forward there is to maintain the 6 tennis courts we have because we do have a lot of interest in use. However, we are getting a little committee together with a representative from the tennis group, as well as a couple of pickleball players, where we can talk about some lines and layouts where maybe we can have a blended use that'll maybe not make both 100% perfectly happy, but also allow us to have enough areas where they can be reserved, still have designated tennis, designated pickleball. So that'll continue forward, and then I envision us getting the actual design out for bid as we enter the end of the year. So those meetings, we've had a couple so far. We're having another one in a couple weeks. I just want to let you know that there may be, right now we just have 3 tennis courts that have a pickleball facility laid out within it. Those layouts have changed a lot through the years, and we'll be actually working with Rattler Corporation on that as well for some design services and that group. So there'll be more to come on that. But that'll be an exciting upgrade when we're done with it at the end of the year. You know about Buchholz Playground. We're looking at a roof project over at the Willett for resurfacing the roof. We have a recoat of the slide, which is also due in the budget. We're going to be doing some tuck pointing on the chimney at the Boy Scout Lodge. And then we're going to be looking at the design of the Gerke turf, which is actually from funds that are from additional revenue from the turf. So it's not a borrowed capital project, but that process is starting. There's probably a fundraising component to that. So that'll probably be a multi-year thing, and you'll definitely be involved in it, but that was listed in the capital budget as well. And then just a couple of equipment pieces between 2 mowers and a new Gator UTV, which we use for several different things, including ball field grooming, stuff of that nature. Lastly, the operational budget that you all reviewed has gone on, and the Finance Committee next week will be reviewing it and looking at the tax levy pieces of it. So you'll see in November, both of these budget processes will be completely done, and then we'll be moving forward with those operations for next year. I know that was really fast speaking, but it's because I wanted to give some time to the others. So I guess we'll start. I think Scott is up first.
Okay, well, basically, summer's over and we're getting ready for winter. So all of our unheated buildings have been winterized and blown out. Irrigation is winterized and blown out as well. We are transitioning our equipment from mowing to snow blowing and brooms. So we're getting equipment ready to go. Hopefully by the end of this week or early next week, we'll be working with Security Fence, replacing the home run and sideline fence posts at Xenoff. For years, we've had issues with concrete being on those posts and frost heating them up. So Security Fence is going to install those, and hopefully it'll be a headache removed. I'm accepting applications for the winter sports staff. I will be doing interviews and hiring just before Thanksgiving, and waiting for snow to fly, really.
All right, thanks, Scott. I think Kate is next.
I almost forgot to unmute myself here. Our fall Learn to Skate session is wrapping up here, so that'll be done right before Thanksgiving. We've had great success and great feedback by offering that program for our skaters. We had a total of 142 Learn to Skate registrations. That's about 25 more than our normal fall numbers are, so that's great, even with classes capped at certain numbers and with COVID, so that's awesome to see. Our winter Learn to Skate session registration will be open in the next week or so. We open that before the holidays, and those sessions will start just after the holidays, right around the first to second week of January. So we have also taken over the Adult Hockey League that used to skate at the Willett Ice Arena. And we also took over the College Hockey League that used to be the Intramural League. We've had great success with both those leagues. The Intramural League skates on both Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. And then the Adult League skates on Wednesday evenings just before the College Hockey League. We've had great success with those programs. The guys and gals enjoy a pickup game of hockey on a weekly basis, to get some physical activity and just some camaraderie too. So they're enjoying that option to skate. We've continued to have our weekend and weekday public skating sessions, obviously working under the 50-person gathering on the ice, as well as our Willett COVID procedures. We also added the Wednesday. Usually we only had Tuesdays and Thursday weekday public skate. We added Wednesday with that being a virtual day or the day off for some of the schools around the area. So that's been a great thing added this season. SPASH hockey team and university has begun practice and captain's practice these last few weeks. So it brings back a little sense of normalcy in the arena to hear those hockey pucks flying. And then the rubber flooring on the lower level of the Willett is our last capital project that'll wrap up in the next week or so to round out our 2020 capital projects. So that is my summary of the arena right now.
Thanks, Kate. And Todd is last.
Okay. Hello. We are wrapping up our fall tree planting. We planted about 90 trees in town, in the parks, and that's combined in the parks and along the streets. Kind of neat. This year we planted 3 American chestnuts. Those are in Iverson Park, so we'll see how those go. So that's the first time we planted that tree in in the parks at all. So we're looking forward to see how that goes. So that'll be wrapping up later on this week probably. We actually celebrated Arbor Day. It was last week with a memorial tree planting with our international student that he bought the tree, and with that was our designated Arbor Day tree in Piffner Park. So that was kind of neat. We had the university, because all their classes are virtual right now. We had one of the professors asked if he could borrow one of our trees to do a demonstration on the planting, because typically his classes have helped us plant trees in the fall. So what we did is we kind of worked together, and Sarah from CA3 came over and she videotaped him planting the tree so he could share it with his students rather than doing the hands-on like they normally did. And we're going to be putting that on our website too for people to look, to watch on the proper way to plant a tree. So I think that was a good partnership again. So that'll be coming up very soon. I'm going to use that when we have a new contractor with tree planting, just to show them so there's no miscommunication. They can read stuff all day long, but now they can see it. And there should be no miscommunication as to what we are expecting. We ordered a bunch of seed for the prairie. Bob and Sue should have gotten emails with through the Audubon with that. That's sitting in my office. So we'll be doing a fall planting again, hopefully, out at Kosakowski Park, and hopefully that takes a little bit better. So I'll be contacting you two people to see what we should do with that. And our fall staff is they'll be winding down at the end of this month, but we are very fortunate. I think I got 4 or 5 students that are still working with us, one full-time and the other ones are just part days. And we were able to go through all our tree planting, our past tree plantings, and re-mulch stuff, and take stakes off. And we've got a lot of extra pruning and a lot of shrub bed maintenance that we've been kind of putting off. That it was very handy and very helpful. So I think that's what we have going on, and we're just working on our spring planting. And we'll be trying a couple neat trees that I'll have to talk to Bob about, with hardy rubber tree, and I forget a couple other that I've been talking to you about, Bob, that we're going to try.
All right, thanks, Todd. That completes the Combined Joint Effort Director's Report.
Okay, any questions for Dan or any of his staff members? Okay, thank you, everybody. Oh,
I have one.
Kira, yes.
With all the talk about winter sports, will there be an ice rink downtown again?
The short answer is we will have all the supplies and be ready to put it in as long as we don't face any hurdles. We've got the exterior framing, and Scott's team has already talked through getting the liner, so we will be ready to put it in, provided nothing changes with the downtown, that we're not aware of at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So get your ice skates ready.
Well, thank you, Dan, and your staff. Good presentations. All right, item number 10, adjournment. A motion, please.
Move to approve.
Okay, moved and seconded. Second by Mike. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.